Please welcome Joey Whimple and Jennifer Marie Long. Welcome to the show. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Let's get straight into the topic and the day as it happened. Donald Trump tweeted out this message essentially banning transgender service members from serving in the military. Let's talk about the impact. First and foremost, what would the possible impact be if that were to happen right now to somebody who was serving in the military as a transgender person?
The immediate piece, you're looking at a reduction of force by nearly 15,000 service members across the board that serve in various segments, all branches, different skill sets. Some are highly regarded skill sets that are, very valuable to the military.
Right.
That is an immediate reduction that you're looking at in a force reduction.
So America as a whole loses military personnel who are helping keep the country safe.
Absolutely.
On a personal level, on a professional level, what does that mean to you as a transgender person who was serving? Because you are now both veterans, but as someone who is actively serving, what would that mean for you?
Someone who is actively serving, well, the past administration made a lot of strides in order to lift this ban,
right.
And there was a lot of promise that was set in, and individuals felt that comfort, that safety net to come out
right.
in their units, and when they're working in these strenuous environments and such, and they felt that comfort to come out and say, hey, I identify this way, and now the carpet's being completely ripped out from underneath, and it just leaves this question of uncertainty. What's next? There's just those 3 tweets. We haven't seen any legislation, anything of the sort. We have no idea what this means.
When you say the rug has been pulled out, what does that mean specifically?
Well, you think of the service members, those that are serving actively. Many of them had come out, based on the last administration allowing open service. So then they were kind of lured into the open, and now at the same time, now that they're in the open, now their careers are in danger. Some, most of them are career soldiers. Those are the ones that made a career out of serving in the military, serving worldwide and globally with those demands, and now that's in jeopardy. Many have families. It's the impacts of their families as well. So now you're looking at getting literally fired from the military, being unemployed, and the main change to your family. How devastating would that be to any individual who showed up to work and somebody finds out that their whole department's going to be closed or their job is in jeopardy?
Now, it's not just fired when it's the military. There is also the issue of how you are discharged.
Mm-hmm. That's an important issue.
Is that something that would concern an active service member?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely, because that discharge code is everything. It's education benefits, it's health benefits, it's the lead into a new job. They can never work in the federal government again with a dishonorable discharge or anything underneath honorable, so it leaves that uncertainty for them completely.
If we look at part of what the president was tweeting about, many of those ideas have been, shot out there by multiple different people. People go like, why should we pay? Why should America's military have to pay for you to have your gender reassignment surgery? Why should America have to pay for you to figure it out? As somebody who served for a very long time, how would you respond to that, and what do you think people need to understand about serving in the military as a transgender person?
Well, again, back to many of us who are career soldiers. The military made a bigger investment in me, training me to do various skills, to raise my skill sets up, to raise my service up. And they were valuable skill sets. They would spend, if there was any other medical procedure that was necessary for my own health and safety, the military would provide it, full care, no matter what it may be. So, and in this case, they were providing that care. I served on active duty. I was deployed overseas in Afghanistan while I was on hormone therapy and in the middle of my transition, and I was very successful in accomplishing my mission to the fullest extent.
When people bring up the second part of the argument, which is you cannot serve because you are experiencing a hormone therapy, or you cannot serve because you're transitioning. I saw people today saying things like, you don't want someone who is distracted and delusional on the battlefield. Talk to us about that experience. What is that like, serving and transitioning? I mean, it would be nice to know what it was like for you in that, and it would be nice to know why you decided to transition once you had left the military.
I began my transition in 2009, right after my last tour in Iraq, and I just made the decision to physically transition. And then it's a long process. There's therapy that goes in there. Then you begin the hormone regime, and I began that. And that still takes a long time. It still takes months and months and months. There's no distinct one-day grand change. It's a gradual change over a period of months that your body begins to physically make changes.
And does it affect your ability to perform as a soldier?
No. Case in fact is, again, I'll refer back to Afghanistan. My job was probably the most distinct job that I had in the military after 30 years. I was that of a combat advisor. I was assigned to the French Army as an advisor to train, advise, and assist the development of the Afghan police force in the northern province of Kapisa. With that job, it was the most dynamic job I had in my career to date.
Right.
And I was able to do that job with great distinction. I received the Bronze Star, the French National Defense Medal. I was the first soldier to receive that medal from the French since World War II.
Wow.
So, when you say... So in respect to saying, are we capable, that's not necessarily true. There's many servicemen out there today and servicewomen who are serving with distinction. There's company commanders, there's airline pilots, there's Air Force pilots. They're in all walks of life and jobs.
If someone says, though, yes, but you may not be as strong as you once were, you may not be able to fight as tenaciously as you once did because of this, someone says, well, how can you be in the military if you're not that super soldier? What does that mean for you as a transgender person?
Specifically, I would feel like somebody was judging me on my gender identity rather than what my character or my skill set can bring to a role. I performed incredibly in my role. I was an HR supervisor for a combat support hospital, and I was in charge of everything. And I was also a full honors funeral pallbearer. There was absolutely no strain on my position because of my gender identity. I didn't physically transition in the military because I was so afraid of the negative repercussions. When I was serving, it was considered a mental disorder to identify as transgender, and I saw people being chaptered out and dishonorably discharged from my unit left and right for various different reasons. Right. So I held in my true self, and I was miserable, absolutely miserable, but I socially transitioned outside of work. I went by a male name, and I started introducing myself as a boy away from work, and it ate me up inside that I had to live this lie when I was working, but that didn't affect my job.
It's interesting that you bring up jobs like pallbearer and working in HR. I know I'm not the only person who thinks military is only gun, bang, bang, boom, grenade, right?
But I did that work.
You did that work as well? But there are many other jobs that don't involve actually going out in combat but still supporting.
They say the ratio in the forces for every line combatant, there's about 7 to 15 soldiers that are in support of that combatant. So the ratio, it takes more support to support somebody that's actually on the front line than the actual numbers of soldiers on the front line themselves, because we need so much support to operate globally. We do when we operate, when we set up a base, we operate in that base like a separate city. All the infrastructure is there for everything.
When we look at what the president said with regards to disruption, again, message that's echoed through multiple places, you hear people saying, this is disruptive to the military. The fact that you are transgender is causing us to have this discussion, and now people are not focusing on fighting, and you are causing a problem. Do you feel that you are causing a problem? Do you feel that you being transgender is disrupting what's happening?
Absolutely not. No, I feel as if it is more or less something that's new, and individuals are afraid of change, such as those that are in charge of our country. Therefore, if a car is breaking down and there's a problem with the engine, you don't scrap the entire car. You work on it piece by piece to bring it up. I feel as if this is just a tiny piece of the military that people are afraid of because it's uncharted waters, and more or less, and I feel as if this is just something that can be worked with.
But did you experience, as someone who was in command, did you experience people reacting differently to you? Did you notice, your soldiers maybe not being as focused as they would have been because of what you were experiencing?
Most of that had occurred in my career at the very end. In the end, I wasn't allowed to serve openly. The very few last weeks of my career, word got out that I was transgender and that I was in fact living another life. And the command called me up and asked me to retire quietly. So my career ended, with a phone call asking to retire, and then I was retired, not with great fanfare, not with the pomp and circumstances that comes to someone, of a senior enlisted. I was a sergeant major. That's the highest of enlisted ranks. I advised senior officers on on operations.
Right.
I handled troop welfare. These are the most trusted jobs in the military. And I was doing it up until that moment, until they found out. And interestingly enough, after so much time, many of them now understand, and they get it, and I'm friends with them, and I talk to them, and we've had conversations on it. And as far as the readiness is concerned, it's more of a misnomer. First of all, statistically, we're not a large volume of soldiers. It's not like we're talking about half the U.S. Army. There was a bigger factor when we talked about in the time of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Right.
Everybody had the same fears existed. And in those same fears was, how is it going to impact readiness? Same conversations we had. And the military went to great lengths of briefing soldiers and doing studies and figuring out how it was going to work. And I gave those briefings to my soldiers and to the battalion. I gave those briefings on open service myself. And it was interesting because the command wondered how many were going to come out. Or what was it going to be like in the force? How are we going to handle it? And when it was all said and done, and the day they actually changed, you know what happened? Nothing. Nothing changed. Force was still the same. Everybody still served the way they did. So it impacted readiness. And we already have open service. So there's service members now, 15,000 service members right now serving on active duty openly. So if there's no disruption there, and it's not like General Mattis isn't saying we have a problem with force and readiness, then it's not an issue. Right now, the only reason it's not hasn't completed was the military was still completing the study on new service members entering the service on exactly what the protocols were going to be. But the fact of open service was there. And I even bring it to the fact of, look at other nations. There are about 14 other nations that have transgender folks serving openly.
Right.
Two of our largest partners, you got Britain and Australia. I mean, you have multiple nations that have service members. The Israeli forces have it, and they serve with distinction without issue. So when you look at other armies, we're not approaching something new. This is something that's, that has been proven, and we still show our ability to serve.
When you read the reports today, I mean, it was reported that Donald Trump reportedly wanted this money to be removed from the military budget so that he could allocate it to the building of his wall. If you had the opportunity to reach the president or send a message to him, or maybe even the people who work with him, what would you say is the one thing you wish he would understand about transgender people serving in the military?
Well, the one piece is, you're looking at cost. Well, you've showed the graph on how small the cost really is. It's fractional, at best, a small fraction of the military budget. So it's not like you're gonna buy a lot of bricks for a wall with that. I think the wall would be about 3 bricks high and about 6 feet long at the cost of construction today. So, you're not getting it's not a big diversion of funding.
Right.
And again, it's a distraction that I think that it's placed into the media at this very moment. Because again, you said when the generals were advised, they had no comment, they didn't even know it was coming out. So how can the generals have been advised, how can he have taken counsel from the generals in this aspect? So they're not aware of it. And knowing the type of general that General Mattis is, if it was an issue, that man would speak his mind.
Yeah, we know that about him.
Yeah. So I think he would have come out forth and said that. So if the generals aren't having necessarily a big issue with that, they're worried about bigger issues in funding and force management, deployment overseas, trying to find a new strategy that works in Afghanistan, now the re-entry of going back into Iraq a second time, taking Mosul again, Raqqa and other more important areas, how to fight that battle and be strategically and have the Iraqi forces be able to withstand. And at the same time, we're then looking to a third theater coming into Syria. I mean, these are some serious considerations right now. We're saying bringing it down to the level of worrying about force readiness on a transgender soldier is way off target. That's not an issue at all when you're thinking some of the bigger things that we have on our plate right now as far as global security.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing. Joey Whimple and Jennifer Marie Long, everybody.